Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jenna. I'm the founder and CEO of Million Marker. At Million Marker, we're all about hormone balance. We want to help people to achieve hormone balance so that they can optimize their health and live better. This month is actually Thyroid Awareness Month. And then we recently actually had Dr. Peria joining us to talk about thyroid health. And then you can check out our discussion in the Reel section of our Instagram feeds. And today we're going to talk about adrenal health, which is like because the adrenal gland is actually much related to thyroid functions and vice versa. And today we're super excited to have Dr. Amber Fischer joining us and requested. So we're going to have her tell us more about adrenal health. Amber is actually a functional. Oh, here she is. Hi, Amber.
Hi. Hello.
Nice seeing you. I was just about to read a little bit about your bio, so I'm glad you
Great.
joined right away. So here we go. So Amber is a functional nutritionist based in San Antonio and then in Texas, who specializes in fertility and hormones, especially PCOS. And then we know there are like 4 types of PCOS, and then one of them is the adrenal PCOS, which is pretty specialized. And so we're going to discuss adrenal gland with you, and then also adrenal fatigue, which is pretty prevalent these days, and then give people some, practical advice about adrenal health and including food. And then I know you're a dietitian, so as a dietitian myself, I'm just like super stoked to have you on. So thank you
Yeah,
so
I'm really
much.
excited to talk to you. Yes. Yes.
So okay, first start I also actually just visited San Antonio a little like not so long ago, and I really
Oh,
really liked it. So and then because our lab is based in San Antonio, where they test the
really?
BPA, phthalates, and all these things that we're testing. Great
Huh.
food. Um,
Yes.
it and then
Very good.
people are very nice.
That's the thing we do the best here. The thing we probably do the most too is eat. I think anyone who's from San Antonio will tell you that there's not like a ton to do except eat. But it's a great place to live. I love it here. We really do.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your, education background, how you got started with your practice in San Antonio.
Yeah, so I actually used to work in a completely different field. I was in social services, and when I was in my mid 20s, I was dealing a lot with health issues. I have PCOS myself. I didn't know what was going on or get very much help. So I started getting interested in nutrition, and around that time, I actually had endometrial cancer as a complication of PCOS and just, like all the over estrogenic stuff going on in the body with that. And that was really what inspired me to go back to school, get my master's degree in nutrition, and then, go through that whole process of becoming a nutrition professional. And ever since then, I've been working in this field, just like really the last few years, specializing really hardcore on PCOS and fertility and hormone balance and all that, because that's really where my passion is. So yeah. And then
Yeah.
I've been associated with the Institute for Functional Medicine for the last few years as well. I'm going through their practitioner training right now, which is intense but exciting, and I'm learning a lot. So hopefully I will finish that in the next 3 years. But yeah.
No, we all think the world need more functional medicine practitioners, and
Oh, I definitely
everybody
agree.
should have. Yeah, totally. We actually recently had Dr. Shelly Weeks joining us to talk about PCOS, and then she gave some really great, general kind of advice, what general information about PCOS. But we know that how this is pretty nuanced, and so we're really excited to hear what you have to say to dive in a little bit deeper about the less known these kind of like a form of PCOS, the adrenal of PCOS. So, but first of all, like tell us a little bit about the adrenal gland, and then, what are the hormones do they produce, and why is it so important?
Yeah, so the way that I like to explain the adrenals simply is that, but well, basically they're these glands that sit on top of your kidneys, right? And they kind of make our like energy hormones, but also our stress hormone. So there's a delicate balance with that, right? Because we want some energy, but we just don't want like too much to the point where it's very stressful. So one of the hormones that we produce is called cortisol. And cortisol is great for, it helps to regulate your blood pressure and all these other things, especially when you're in a situation where you're under high pressure, high stress. It's definitely that hormone that we think of when we think about fight or flight, that and adrenaline as well. But cortisol exists in a very delicate balance in our body. So we want some, we just don't want too much. The way that it works is that we produce it on a rhythm. So throughout the day, we'll have more cortisol in the morning, like usually around 10 a.m. is kind of when it peaks. And then throughout the day, it'll kind of like gradually go down. And that's what helps us be sleepy for bed and all of that. The adrenals also produce DHEA, which is a precursor hormone to like all of our other hormones. So we make testosterone from it, we make estrogen from that. So it's very important that we have enough DHEA going on. And so sometimes when the adrenals are out of balance, we might reduce how much DHEA we're producing, which can be a problem in like premature ovarian insufficiency and stuff like that. But also in PCOS in particular, there's kind of an offshoot of DHEA called DHEA sulfate or DHEAS. And this is a marker that can get high for a variety of reasons, but in PCOS, it tends to be connected to, like inflammation, insulin resistance, and then excessive stress on the body. And so the stress plays a huge role in all of this. Anytime we're talking about the adrenals, we have to talk about stress and lifestyle and all of that stuff. But I think we take for granted how important the balance of the adrenal glands is to the rest of our hormone health. So did I explain that?
Yeah, pretty important. Kidney is actually like my favorite organ. When I was doing dietetics, it's like I love the kidney the most. So anytime it's kidney adrenals, it's really fascinating.
Kidneys are really fascinating, and I don't know. We don't talk enough about the kidneys, right? Like they play a huge role in detoxification. Like we always think about the liver, but hey, don't forget about the kidneys too.
Yeah, so a lot of people have heard about, the term adrenal gland, from what I understand, it's like not exactly a real diagnosis because they tend to get mixed up with other things. But then it's like a bunch of symptoms that people would have. So how would you describe like adrenal fatigue?
Well, in the functional world, we would call adrenal fatigue like a misnomer. So it's not really adrenal fatigue. There are 4 stages of like adrenal dysfunction is what we would call it. And this can develop like on a gradient. Like the first thing that you might notice is like a lot of people will notice that maybe they're waking up like with their heart pounding, or they just feel like they're, they wake up to an alarm or something and they're just like, bing, they're awake. And it's a little bit of a stressful awakening. Then it starts to mesh into like maybe some energy dips during the day, but you're wired but tired. Like you're up at night, you can't fall asleep, you get like a second wind at night. That's really common. That's a lot of times when I will first see somebody, because once it starts to affect your sleep, that's when people kind of notice that they're like, hey, why can't I sleep? And so that would be like stage 2 adrenal dysfunction. From there, what can happen is that eventually our adrenals can get overburdened by continuing to produce, all of this cortisol. And so we start to see the functioning decrease. And that's when we'll get into like the adrenal fatigue state. So I guess a true adrenal fatigue would be like stage 4 adrenal dysfunction. It's where like you're hardly making any cortisol, you're just like bottomed out all day. But a lot of people kind of exist in this realm where like they're really, really tired all day. Like they have a hard time getting through the day. They rely on caffeine really heavily. But then like maybe at night, suddenly they can't fall asleep, so that's a lot of times when we talk about adrenal fatigue, that's where we're at. So
yeah, it doesn't, it's not a good feeling at all.
It is not. I have been through it myself. I mean, I'm currently like in the middle of addressing it again. I have a 2.5-year-old and, you know, full-time practice. And so I think anyone who, I think most people, most women especially, like understand adrenal issues, like because this is just the world we live in, you know, and it's very hard to not be stressed. But yeah.
Yeah, especially parents with the kids under 5 during the pandemic. Now with the Omicron, you know, with the
Yeah.
school closing
We're
down,
tired.
yeah, it's hard. So
Yeah.
everybody should pay more attention. So like, you know, how could adrenal kind of disorder eventually leads to PCOS?
Yeah, so um, with PCOS, a lot of times where I'm looking at with adrenal dysfunction is that high DHEAS. So, like I said, there can be multiple reasons why your DHEA would get too high. But in the case of PCOS, it's often related to insulin resistance or inflammation. It can be related to stress as well. And oftentimes there's a component of that. So we have to look at those other root causes as well, because I mean, sometimes with adrenal PCOS, we kind of tend to like want to say like, oh, it's just the adrenals, but the adrenals don't exist in a vacuum. They're affected by everything else in your body. So we have to look at those other root causes. But purely from a stress perspective, what I see happen a lot is that with PCOS, we often have anxiety, like that's a very common comorbidity. Like we often will have high stress lives, like high cortisol for a long time. And then that high cortisol eventually leads to like these sort of adrenal fatigue type issues that then start to play out in the hormones. So it's just because your DHEAS isn't high does not mean that you don't have like an adrenal issue with your PCOS, if that makes sense. Like if you feel, I mean, you can test for this stuff, but I often go by how like people are feeling too, you know, like if you feel like you're wired but tired, like, or you're getting a huge energy dip in the afternoon, or you need caffeine to survive, like that's a strong sign that there's an adrenal component to it. And if there is an adrenal component to it, that can make other issues of PCOS worse. So it can, first of all, it can make your body make more androgens, right? Because DHEAS is an androgen. So that can increase those facial hair symptoms and the hair loss and all that stuff. It can also make you more insulin resistant, which is interesting, you know, because when we are producing too much cortisol, our body brings our blood sugar up to kind of to compensate for that. So we release glycogen from the muscles. And so like, yeah, if you're like really stressed, your blood sugar's higher. And that's not a great place to be when you have PCOS. So yeah, it's all connected, but it definitely is something to look at.
I can definitely attest to that because I actually have this super rare condition that I get Cushing's during pregnancy.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
yeah, for anybody who don't know, Cushing's is a disease that pretty much is displayed by high cortisol, and then it's has pretty much all the comorbidity that you just mentioned about that I actually experienced it all. So it's like really not fun. Losing sleep at night, high blood pressure too, and also high insulin, I mean resistance, almost gestational diabetes, and plus all the androgen like hair, facial growth, and then plus other things. Yeah, not fun. So anyone
Cushing's
who's
is
like,
no fun. And I really think like Cushing's and PCOS, a lot of times they can look very similar, you know? And I sometimes, I mean, my opinion on it is I think that some people are like maybe misdiagnosed as PCOS when there's really like a Cushing's issue. But I know usually we have to test for all of that stuff too, and that's not really in my scope. But yeah, they can look very similar, and yeah, it's no fun.
yes, everybody please pay attention on your adrenal
Yes.
health because
Yes.
it's just so important.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so what are some food that, you know, because we're talking about nutrition, you know, what are some food that can best support adrenal glands?
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot about this kind of question because, you know, as a nutritionist, I do get asked a lot, like, are there like superfoods or things that I can eat? And of course, like there are things like that. Like, for example, eating enough protein is really key with your adrenal function. Like you need to make sure that you're eating an ample amount of protein for your body weight, because that protein can help to keep your blood sugar steady, which can help to prevent your adrenals from kind of being like overactive. When you get these blood sugar swings, it'll bring your cortisol up and all that. So protein is huge. But when I think about the adrenals and food, I often think about like meal timing more than anything. Like I don't see fasting and like intermittent fasting and stuff like that being like a really great option for people with adrenal issues, especially when they are women and we've got these like the hormones that we need to keep balanced. Because whenever we skip meals, we don't have consistency with when we're eating and with the nutrient balance of what we're eating. That causes our body to feel, kind of stressed, and then that causes an increase release of those hormones. So I think just being careful about eat breakfast. Like if you're dealing with adrenal fatigue, like eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You don't need to make it overly complicated, but I don't think that's the right time to play around with fasting. Not that fasting is always a bad thing. Like, of course, there's lots of great research that, that there's some benefits to it in different populations. But I think with adrenal issues, like just eat, nourish yourself. Having enough fats in your diet is also important. So like really just being really balanced. Brazil nuts and like selenium can help as well. So I always tell people like 2 Brazil nuts a day is really good. And that's also really great for your thyroid health. And I know this is like thyroid month and all that. So yeah, those kinds of things. Now, herbally, this is where I really get excited, because there's like some herbs and things that we can use as well that I think really make like the biggest difference when you're going through an acute adrenal issue. Things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, like those are lifesavers. So I don't know if those technically count as a food, but kind of, because they're leaves. So, but yes, those can make a big difference. A big difference when you're going through this kind of thing, especially with your sleep and your energy during the day.
You kind of answered my next question, because people are always interested in supplements, but no, this is great, because you have a full script page and then with supplement recommendations on your Instagram, and then so besides ashwagandha, rubios, like what are the other supplement that people should be thinking about?
I am actually like a really huge fan of rhodiola, and I don't think rhodiola gets enough play. You hear about ashwagandha a lot, and ashwagandha is great. I take ashwagandha, like I'm a big fan. It can raise testosterone, and so if like you are dealing with a specific issue with high testosterone right now, like I don't know. I won't get too much into that, but I usually don't see it be a problem, but still, you might want to be careful with it. Rhodiola, I think is a little bit more of a safe bet if you do have PCOS. It's something that we know can bring down your cortisol in the morning, and it can help to balance things out throughout the day. So that's really great. Another really great one is called phosphatidylserine. And phosphatidylserine is also safe to take like when you're trying to conceive during pregnancy and all that. So if that's something that you're looking at, and phosphatidylserine is another one of those ones that just like helps to balance things out. I would say that usually if it's a sleep issue, I prefer to use ashwagandha like at night, and rhodiola during the day. Just a personal preference. If it's an energy issue, I lean on rhodiola a lot, because I find that like it gives people a little bit more energy. And then if I don't really know what's going on, or if I'm kind of like, like is there cortisol high at night or what? If I just don't know, phosphatidylserine is great, because it can bring things up or down as they need to be, and can be very effective for that. So yeah, I love all 3 of those. And there are others, but there's one product that I think is on my full script called Cortisol Calm, and it's by Pure Encapsulations. I don't know if I'm allowed to rep specific ones, but I love that product in particular. Like I take that every night. So if you need some help sleeping and you see that one on there, that would be a good choice to start with.
Awesome. Great. Awesome tips. Love this. So we know that you don't take on every client, because you want to make sure that you have ample time for each person. And then, they must set up a discovery call with you before signing up the service. What's a call like?
So, yeah, the really great thing about doing what I do for as long as I've done it is that people have heard about me and now there's a lot of interest in working with me, which is a wonderful problem to have. The sad part is that I can't help everybody that reaches out to me. So the way I have kind of set things up is like kind of a little bit of a screening system, I guess. I try to work with people who I feel like I can do a really good job for. So discovery sessions, by the time you get to that stage, I'm pretty sure that we're going to be a good fit. And it's just a chance for us to like get to know each other. We spend an hour together and we'll talk about your health history, what things you've tried, like, and I'll give you like some general advice on what direction I think you need to go in. And then from there, if you want to continue working with me, I'm working with package clients right now. And there's all that information on my website. I have transparent pricing and all that. But yeah, the discovery session is cool because it's a really good chance to like get some advice and have a functional nutritionist look over your labs and all that stuff. And I feel like that's where I really want to, my goal is to give you an experience of like, that you're being seen, that you're being heard, because I think so often, like,
Yes.
at least in my experience, like I would go into practitioners or to doctors and it's like, no one's really seeing me or looking at me. And that's so frustrating, so if nothing else, I want you to come away from a discovery session feeling that way with me. But yeah, that's how it works.
This is cool. And then you also mentioned all the package service and everything. So
Yeah.
tell us about all the service, some of the service.
Yeah, so the way I've gotten into doing things is, because I run my practice full time, but I also am home with my son full time. So it's a fun balance. So I don't take on very many clients at once because I want to be able to like be available to everybody. So I only work with clients who do something called my Vibrant Health Package, and it's like 6 visits with me. It's kind of like concierge nutrition. So like basically anything you need during that time is kind of covered. Like we do some labs, we do like food sensitivity, allergy testing, and there's other things that we can do as well. I'll do like supplement recommendations for you. We meet up every month or so and like work on your diet. We change your meal plan how we need to. So it's really fun. Like I love doing that. I love working that way because I like to follow people from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. I really don't like to like have one session with somebody. I'm sure you're a dietitian, like it's like
it doesn't work.
You just can't do it that way. You can't have one session with them and then a follow-up and then just be like, okay, bye. I want to see you through the entire process, and that process takes time, like at least 6 months. That's what I make you sign up for, 6 months. But like usually it takes longer, especially with hormones.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on with that. And I find that hormone balance is like kind of the last thing to fix because I think it's like the body's lowest priority when it comes to health. So yeah, following you from beginning to end. So if that sounds good to you, I would love to meet you.
This is important because people have to be committed in order to see any positive change, right?
Honestly, that's where a lot of that came from. Is I've done things all kinds of different ways over the years, and I used to do just pay by the session, and it's just it's not as fulfilling from the practitioner side when the client is not like fully committed to the process. But I think it's also not, you don't get as much out of it as the client when it's kind of just like see me whenever type thing. So I think the structure seems to work really, really well. I feel like my clients get a lot more out of it, and I get better feedback on my work with them over the last few years since I've been doing it that way than I used to before. And also, I've been doing this for a while, so like I get better at it the more I work, but it works well, I think, for nutrition. So that's what I love about it, because it's like you get to really know me and I get to really know you, and you can message me, and like I'm accessible to you. I'm there to encourage you and support you. It's not just like, oh, I can't talk to Amber until I see her in like 2 months or something. It's like I want to be there for you. So I think that's really the best way to facilitate like real lifestyle change. Anyway, sorry, I'm like little
no, this is
fumbling.
this is great. I love the approach. That's what we needed. And then that's also part of the reason like I didn't want to be a hospital dietitian anymore because a while back because I literally spent 15 minutes with a patient and I have to chart for an hour. And of course they don't have anything, they don't remember anything we talk about and they never really
Right.
practice any lifestyle changes. So this is really important.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference, like from a practitioner perspective, when you're like in private practice versus like working in like an organization, because especially with like hospital work, like you're going to see somebody and they might not necessarily like be interested in talking to you, right?
Exactly.
So you're
Exactly.
planting the seed for them, but you don't know if it's going to grow. And like with me, people don't come to me until they're really ready to like make big changes. So it's more fun for me because it's like, everyone I work with is like committed and excited. But I know that feeling of like, oh, I know I can help you so much, but you just aren't listening.
Yes.
So it's frustrating. But yeah.
Yeah. But for people who are not seeing you, you also have great resource for them is through your podcast, Amber Day. So, tell us about the podcast a bit.
So I have had a podcast called An Amber a Day, the Functional Nutrition Podcast, since 2018. And I have had periods that, like, it's funny because I've been doing that podcast for so long that like I can go back and listen to old episodes and I'll be like, I don't know if I agree with myself anymore. So if you listen to it, I have an episode not too long ago where I talk about the way my opinions have changed about nutrition over the years, which I had a lot of fun doing. But it's a podcast where I talk a lot about like health and hormones. I talk about like more general functional nutrition topics like inflammation, chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, the Mediterranean diet. I'm like big on the Mediterranean diet as a general rule. But I also talk a lot about PCOS. PCOS, inflammation, insulin resistance, like those are my topics. I also talk a lot about fertility treatments, IVF, because I've been through IVF and I work with a lot of clients who are going through fertility treatments and all that kind of stuff. So if that is if that's interesting to you, you will probably like the podcast. We are on episode 61, I want to say. So it's been a lot of fun. Yes.
Oh, this is awesome. So where can people find your podcast?
So you can find it on any of the podcast platforms. Most people listen to it through Apple Podcasts, but it's on Spotify also. And then there's also a link in my bio here on Instagram, or I'm on TikTok as well. Like if you go to the little link tree in my bio, it'll take you right to my podcast. So you can find it there.
Awesome. Wonderful. So thank you so much. So for everybody joining, so be sure to follow Amber at Amber Fischer Nutritionist on Instagram.
Yes.
And
I used to be Amber Fischer Nutrition, but then I don't know, I got locked out of that account a long time ago. So I'm like, I guess I'll be Amber Fischer Nutritionist. So that's why. But yeah, come see me over here.
yeah, somebody actually just posted a question. Just found out a friend's TTC, and they just found out the apartment they live in has mold. How can I help her?
Ooh, that's a toughie. Mold is a hard one. Mold is a really hard one. I imagine that your testing would be very helpful in that situation. Mold in an apartment, I mean, number one, if they can move out, that would be ideal. If not, an air filter, like take an air filter around with you everywhere you go in there. I mean, I think that's going to be key. That's the biggest thing with mold is like trying not to breathe it in, try not to be exposed to it. From a nutrition perspective, when somebody has a mold issue, a lot of times we look at like limiting mold containing foods. So things like tomato products, like pasta sauce, like pre-made stuff. You can make your own, but like pre-packaged stuff, mushrooms, vinegary stuff, like fermented things, and sometimes like leftovers that are too old. And sometimes that can like help reduce some of the symptomology with mold issues, but fundamentally, like you have to stop being exposed to the mold in the first place. And yeah,
that's pretty much. Somebody just asked what kind of an air filter would you recommend?
a HEPA air filter is usually the way to go. You probably are like more of an expert on this stuff than me, so
Yeah, the HEPA air filter is what we recommend also for both indoor air pollution and, during wildfire, that's also the one that we would recommend. But make sure that you also change your filter, because otherwise it just wouldn't filter anymore.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that mold stuff can make such a huge difference too, and can be so hidden. Like especially if you have like these lingering issues and you feel like you're doing everything right, like it might be useful to get tested for that stuff. The tomato products one is just because a lot of canned tomato products, they'll use tomatoes that are like maybe slightly past their prime. Um, and to make them, so they might have some mold on them and then that can stay in the product. So it's just a general rule, nutrition rule about mold. But yeah.
We have not dig into different brands of air filter. A few brands that claiming, I think Air Doctor, they did claim they can clean out a bunch of things, and also it's a molecule, another brand. But I think air filter, they could also be certified by NSF, which is certification body. So maybe it's good to check out on NSF website to see what's being certified, and that would be a good way to go with a air filter. But it's on our agenda, our plan to actually start curating a list of air filters for
Nice.
our followers. We have we have approved product for personal care products, have also a list for water filter, but we are not at air filter yet, but soon. So please stay tuned.
Cool. Yeah. I will be looking for that when that goes live. Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody for joining. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.